I suppose briefly. I mean, I started in the video game business in 1977 at Atari with Nolan Bushnell. 2 years later, spun off of Atari and founded Activision. And 2 years later, ran into this guy. We hired him into Activision. And we've been working on games together ever since.
I have a question. That $67 billion that they spent on Activision, how much of that did you get?
I left Activision in 1987, so I didn't get a dime. But I have the ability to say that I created a company from nothing that became worth $68 billion. So,
Yes, that's pretty impressive.
yeah. So you?
So Dan, my brother Dan, who is not here because he's East Coast based and he didn't fly out for this particular event, he and I were on the East Coast, grew up in New Jersey, outside of New York City. And I was going to school. I'm 5 years older than Dan, or 6 years older than Dan. And I was going to school for art. I had entered college for art. I was always an artist. And after 1 year of art, I got offered a job as call it an intern, whatever, bottom of the barrel, working in an electronics company, little tiny company doing R&D. And they said they needed somebody to pick up lunch and to fill the M&M jar when it, got low, and buy Coke, because Coke's a big thing in engineering offices. So I took that job and started quickly learning on the job because they were 4 people, including me, and they had said way too many promises to clients. So it was really time to step up and do something. If you're here, you're a warm body, write some code. I don't know how to write code. Design a circuit. I don't know how to design a circuit. So anyway, I learned on the job. And part of what we started working on were electronic toys. So I designed a couple of products, which fortuitously ended up being marketed by Parker Brothers, one of the largest toy companies in the world. They did very well. And I was hooked on toys and games. I mean, that was it. I didn't want to do anything else. Dan joined about that time and went through the same learning process I did. And then we saw this upstart company in California in 1979 spin off of Atari and start making video games, which intrigued the heck out of us because I felt that video games were going to really put a dent in the electronic toy business, which was a good size at that point. So I went out, I bought an Atari, and I reverse engineered it. I opened it up, I looked at the chips, I figured out some of the circuits, I connected it to my Apple II, which was a very early Apple II I had bought with every dime I had. And I read the code, figured out how it worked, and did my first game, Space Jockey. That was in 1979, 1980-ish time frame. It was a 2K game. And soon after doing that, I left, and Dan left with me, and we were on our way in the game industry.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people here grew up with video games. We did not. Okay, we created the video game business, really. One of the founding principles of Activision was that a video game is a creative product. It has an author, and an author should be at least acknowledged. And so when we founded Activision, it was that the game designer would be identified on the box, just like an author of a book would be identified on the cover of the book. And in the same process, we were creating the first third-party publisher of video game software. First-party publisher means Atari. Atari made a console, and Atari made games for the Atari console. Mattel was the first-party publisher. They made the Intellivision console, and they made games for the Intellivision console. What Activision did was the first company ever to to make games for somebody else's console. So we did Atari games, we did Intellivision games, we did Coleco games, we did, every single game console that ever came out, we made games for it. It's a big deal because that's how it's done today. I was speaking at a conference at, I don't know, GDC or something, 600 people out there, and I asked for a show of hands. I said, who works for a third-party publisher? And it was everybody, except like at least 5 guys from Sony back in the back, because Sony had a console, so they're first party, right? So that's just the way it is. So yeah, we've been involved from the beginning, basically creating the industry which we call video games today.
So when Dan and I spun off from this electronics company, the reason we spun off is I went to them and said, look, I got you into the video game industry. I reverse engineered the system, wrote a game. They ended up subsequently starting a video game company and selling it to Quaker Oats. Never thought of inviting me into the company. I guess it was an oversight. And I went and said, hey, I need to be better compensated. And they said, you're making $11,000, that's fine. So, out the door. Dan came with me. I got a call quickly after that Coleco had signed a deal with Nintendo and needed someone to write an Atari version of Donkey Kong. And if you think about it at that point, there were very few people in the world who knew anything about writing an Atari game. There were the Atari people, there were the Activision people, and there was me. Because there was really nobody else, I mean, at that point in time. So I had a pretty good shot at getting the contract because I was the only one they could hire. So I agreed and I wrote that in 90 days, and I've never heard the end of it. And it turned out very well, at least in my mind. And Dan started learning 2600. But what we really wanted to do is we wanted to join the company that we thought had the best games. That was Activision. So one day when I was just 80% of the way done with Donkey Kong, I called Activision, pick up the phone. We were working in a basement of my house. It was
in New Jersey.
In New Jersey, unfinished basement, pipes in the ceilings, wires hanging down. And I picked up the phone and I called Activision's main number and I asked for product development, and they bounced around 25 times till I finally came to a guy, and he identified himself as Tom Lopez. He was the head vice president of development. And I said, I'm in New Jersey, I'm writing Atari 2600 games. Want to know if you are interested in working with us? And he said, no, you're not. I said, no, I am writing it. I said, I'm just finishing Donkey Kong. And he said, what's your address? I'll be there tomorrow. So he came the next day, saw what I was doing, met the guys, and we made a schedule to go out and meet with the team at Activision. But we were also talking to Atari at that point. So we also went out to meet with the team at Atari. So we spent a couple of days at Atari, a couple of days at Activision. And the Activision meeting was eventful. Do you have anything to add to the Activision meeting before I go to the full?
No, you should probably talk about your interview at Activision.
Yeah, so they brought us in Scott Boulevard, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it was Scott Boulevard. Not a big company, less than 100 employees. And brought us in the conference room, and we worshipped these guys. I mean, they were gods doing these incredible games, and with their name all over the place. Dave was on TV and all this. We were like dying, going out there, nervous as hell. And we saw their cars in the parking lot, fancy cars. Saw one with a license plate Pitfall on it. And no, I'm lying. It wasn't yet Pitfall time. No, saw these fancy cars. So we went in the conference room, and in walks David Crane and Alan Miller. And it was Dan and I, and we were pretty scared. So they sat down and they started to chit chat. What have you guys been doing? What are you working on? But, technical questions. And then they had a 2600 set up in the conference room on a TV. And at some point when there was a break, Al Miller had just finished ice hockey. And remember, ice hockey was a great two-player game. 2 joysticks, me against you on the screen. And when it was paused in the conversation, he reached over, he took a joystick and he slid it toward us. He goes, anybody want to play? Now, I was a decent player, but Dan was a rock star player. He's always been the better player. So I said, Dan, why don't you play Al? And Dan's like, so this was obviously a test. And they dropped the puck, and within about 20 seconds, Dan scores. Al twitches a little. Drop the puck again, Dan scores. Al scores one. Drop the puck again, Dan scores. Al leans over and goes, what are you doing? And Dan had this way that he could go around the back of the net and kind of score and squeak it into the corner of the net. And it was a move that Al hadn't seen. Because when you're developing a game, you don't anticipate how other people are going to play your game. You play it the way you play it. And Dan soundly beat him, and we got the job off.
This was a game that had not yet released. I mean, like I like to say, the day I release a game, I'm the world champion. About 2 days later, I'm no longer the world champion. 'Cause, millions of kids play it.
2 days later, you're dog meat.
That's right.
You think 380 is a good score, and 2 days later, somebody has 92,000.
Yeah.
And you just go, oh, I don't know what happened.
I designed Pitfall to run from the left to the right. You kind of see it the way it's laid out. And that's the way it was designed, so that's the way I played it. And some kids said, wait a minute, if I run right to left, it's actually easier to play. Largely because if you die on the alligators, your new life spawns on the other side of the alligators if you're going right to left, instead of having to make you do them over and over again and die every time. Things like that. If somebody figures out a different way to play the game, what can you do?
So since that time, Dave and I have worked together since 1982. And Dan, on and off. Dan had a number of years. He was at Majesco, did a lot of work for them. Dave had a couple of years at Hasbro, working on video game hardware. Other than those little windows, we have worked together the entire time. We can read each other's code, we can finish each other's sentences, and we don't drive each other too crazy. So at this point, I mean, we've done so many games that people know about, and they all have good stories. But if you'd like, why don't you lead me in a direction of tell me about a game you'd like to talk about, or a story you may have heard, or just a general question about what we're doing now at Audacity Games, and that'll lead us in a direction.
Could you talk about skateboarding for the 2600?
Skateboard 2600?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole story around skateboard 2600.
Well, yeah. I mean, somebody just recently reminded me that, we've worked on every console ever made. And a new console came out every couple of years. And so every 2 years, we had to start over. We had to learn a new assembly language. We had to learn new hardware. We had to sometimes reverse engineer the hardware, create new development system, create new sound tools, development tools, art tools. All of those things had to happen for us to go on to each new console. So you can choose any console. Now, the skateboarding is kind of a throwback. This happened, skateboarding was, what would that be, 85?
Yeah, it would be 86, 87, I'd say, in that time frame.
So to start with, why were we doing Atari 2600 games in 1986 or 87?
That's a good point.
When the Atari 2600 crashed in 1983.
Right.
Well, you might ask us why we would have the audacity to be making new 2600 games now, but we'll get to that later.
Yes.
But Gary can tell why we were in the 2600 business.
So we were based in Glen Rock, New Jersey. Glen Rock, New Jersey has two claims to fame. One is our office was a parking lot away from one of the largest bakeries in the world for Nabisco. So you went in the morning, you came out in the evening, there was always the smell of Oreos. That's not a bad thing, except when they burned. The other important thing was it's a stone's throw from Toys R Us's world headquarters. Their main offices are in Paramus, next town over. So we were kind of tight with Toys R Us. We had a sales guy that went in there all the time, always talked to them. And one day, Charlie Thomas, the thing I like about Charlie Thomas is he has 2 first names. I always think that's special when somebody has 2 first names. So anyway, Charlie calls me and he says, I just talked to the buyer in video games, and he's having a real problem. People are coming in and asking for 2,600 games, and no one makes them anymore. And this was probably around 86. And the industry had crashed, but nobody told the consumer. The consumer still had the machine. They didn't know the industry crashed. So I said to Charlie, really? Would he really buy 2,600 games? He said, absolutely. He'd buy, 30,000 units right now of any title he had. So we put everything aside, started doing 2,600 games. And then we got calls from Activision, because we had left Activision at that point. At least I had. That's part of the story. Dave was still at Activision. We had calls from Activision saying, can you do 2,600 games? Because they had reached out to other people. And I said, yeah, but you can do them too. He goes, yeah, no, we don't. We got rid of all that stuff. We don't do 2,600 games anymore. So, okay.
Time frame wise, it couldn't have been, I mean, I left in 87. So
But-
this all had to happen after I left.
No.
Yeah.
Not skateboarding.
Yeah, skateboarding.
No,
happened
Dave, not skateboarding.
Yeah, skateboarding happened after I left.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
Were you
I
going to
was-
take away the best
I
part
was
of the
no
story?
longer working for Activision when I was working on skateboarding.
Really?
Yeah. Activision had actually sued me because I left. And so it was very secretive about the fact that I was doing it, but I had
Were
left.
you in a non-compete at that point?
No, I was perfectly legal.
All right,
It's
all right.
just-
All right, I
yeah.
guess so. All right. So anyway, it was about 87. He had left, but there's no way in the world he should have been working with us. We had already gone, started Absolute Entertainment. Dave was in a litigious period with Activision. So we started making games, and turned out Atari couldn't make games on 2,600. We spoke to them. We said, we have nobody who knows how to make 2,600 games. Spoke to Activision. We have nobody who knows how to make 2,600 games. So we started making 2,600 games for everybody because we were the only ones who could do it. No one else knew how to do it.
Name some of those games.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Title match wrestling, skateboarding, Tomcat, crossbow for Atari, Atari baseball. There were a pile of them, about 7 or 8 of them in that 2 or 3 year period. So anyway, we started selling direct to Toys R Us, selling first 2 titles with title match wrestling and skateboarding. Now, we wanted a second title, but we didn't have the bandwidth to write it. So we said, well, how do we get a second title? And I said, give me a minute. I went in the other room and I turned on the bat phone and put the cone of silence on and called him and said, you're not supposed to be working with us. But if you were to work with us, could you write a 2,600 game? And he said, probably not, but I might be able to. So he wrote a 2,600 game, and we were concerned people were going to find out he wrote this game. So we didn't put his name on it. Worse than that, the Consumer Electronics Show was in Chicago, and Dave was staying at the Fairmont Hotel. So I needed to get the code and the ROM so we could manufacture this game. So we agreed to meet in the lobby at a certain time, and we pulled a James Bond, where I sat down with a newspaper, he sat down with a newspaper, he rolled up his newspaper, put it down, and left. I picked up his newspaper, and there was a ROM in it. And that's how he delivered the code to us. And then we published that game and never told anybody David done it until years later, right?
I don't know. Is it in there anywhere? I don't know.
I don't think it's in there anywhere. I don't think it's in there anywhere. So that's how we ended up doing skateboarding. I thought it was a pretty cool game for 2,600.
And there's a 7,800 one too, Super Skateboarding.
Well, but yeah, by that time David left and was officially with Absolute, and yes, he did. We Atari wanted us to support 7800. We didn't sell a ton of units on them, but we did a few just for giggles. And I thought it was completely different, but it was still a good game.
It was a good game.
Yep.
That's one of those that I finally had the foresight to keep a few shrink-wrapped copies on my shelf.
Yeah, that's rare, right? But the funny part is Dave did that game, and the other day, not the other day, a couple months ago when they released the 7800 Plus, I said the obvious question to Dave. I said, should we do 7800 games now they're releasing new hardware for it? And Dave said, I'll be honest with you. He said, I looked at the technical manual, and I feel like I never even wrote a game for it. He goes, I can't believe the way it works. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's some sort of a display list. I had to learn all that stuff, but yeah.
Anyway, we're unsure about the fate of the 7800. I mean, who here is excited about 7800 games? Anybody? Okay, couple. Are there any good 7800 games?
There's a few that were released. Ninja Golf is strangely actually fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. If I remember correctly, there was a port of Berserk on the 7800. Although that's more of a personal favorite.
Yeah, but that would be good.
And that one used the Poke Chip most likely, which is not available anymore.
Oh, really? It's not available
I don't
anymore?
think so, yeah.
Oh, God.
I forget I think it's like Blaze Ball. One of the
Ball
two.
Blazer?
Yeah,
Oh.
Ball Blazer. That's what it is.
Oh, Lucasfilm?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a
so
Lucasfilm.
I like it I like that one from a technical
Oh,
aspect.
yeah, it's amazing from a technical aspect. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know about gameplay, but
But anyway, I mean, people ask me how many games I've made, and I cannot remember. I will go through a list, and every time I go through the list, try to remember the games I've done, I get up right around 100, and I realize I've forgotten one. So we've done a lot of games, and you ask these questions, these memories are coming back from the deep, dark resources of our brain.
Although I do have a question regarding, you brought up that you did Donkey Kong on 2016?
yes.
So I had heard a story, I had heard somewhere online, like someone said like Coleco intentionally made the
Yes.
the 2600 and Intellivision versions of
That's why I referred to that at the beginning. When I said I never heard the end of it. Yes, I've refuted this so many times, but I will refute it one more time. I did absolutely the best job you could ever do on that cartridge for a 90-day game. 90 days, soup to nuts, beginning to end. No one. I worked directly with the brothers who owned Coleco.
Yeah.
What were their names?
I don't know. I'm
Come on.
thinking of the Block Brothers.
No,
when
not
you
the
asked
Block
that, I know.
Brothers. Anyway, I worked directly with these guys. They stood behind me. In the last 3 days I was writing code. They never said anything like that. Never. The only thing they said is, we have to ship for Christmas. And they didn't have to tell me that. I knew that was the reality. I mean, you've got the biggest license of the biggest coin-op game, and you're going to miss Christmas with it so that you can have an elevator level? I don't think so. I don't think there's anybody in this room who would have made that decision. There's no way. So basically...
You also had limited time, limited resources,
Limited-
limited ROM.
Yeah, limited ROM, limited time. If they had gone to me and said, instead of 4K, you can have 16K.
Well, you went to him and said, can I have 8K?
Yeah,
I'll
and
put
he
it
said-
another level.
He said, yeah, as long as you're done by May 31st.
And it doesn't cost anymore. Wait a
And it-
minute, it costs 30 cents more. No way,
Yeah, they knew they were going to sell every unit of that they were going to manufacture.
But there's a better story about the development of Donkey Kong.
Yes, there is. That's
When
true.
Tom Lopez came out to visit Gary in that basement, that unfinished basement, he had a parting comment. One of the things that the Atari 2600 is really hard at doing is making the right side of the screen different than the left side of the screen.
Two separate images.
If you look at combat, for example, if you'll notice that all of the playfield objects are symmetrical. All right, it is designed to make a symmetrical playfield.
Or reflected.
It can reflect it, but it's generally designed to make these reflected things, right? And so when Gary first did the Donkey Kong, the levels or the platforms were flat, because if you tried to make them tilted, then the right side's different than the left side, or
can't
because I'm
do
looking
that.
this way,
You
right
can't
side.
make different image on one side and the other side.
So Tom Lopez's parting comment to Gary when he was talking about whether he's gonna maybe become an Activision designer, while ColecoVision Donkey Kong is still being made, is he said, if you worked for Activision, those ramps would be sloped.
He only
Because-
said that because his name was Tom Sloper.
No, Tom Lopez.
I know, man.
Wrong guy.
Sloper.
Wrong Tom.
So anyway,
Yeah.
you know, he challenged me, so I had to do it just to show off.
Because that is something that we prided ourselves at Activision. We made the best games. Everybody believes it, everybody knows it, and I will say it without lightning striking me down. But we did it because we put in all the extra effort. If there was something that we could do that made it just a little bit better, we would do that. Pitfall, for example. Everybody talks about how hard the alligators are. You think they're hard now, you should have seen them before. With the Atari 2600, when you're reading the joystick, we read it every 60th of a second. So that's our frame rate. We're reading this stick. And for you to jump across the heads of the alligators, originally, you would have to move the joystick to the right and press the button within the same 60th of a second period, so that you would jump at a horizontal, or jump diagonally, right? Most of the time, you would start to run first and fall in his mouth. Or you would jump straight up and be frustrated because you can't jump horizontally. So I put an awful lot of effort into making it so that there was at least a 3-frame period where after you jumped, you could then go laterally. And I adjusted its distance accordingly and such. And nobody knows that's in there. Nobody,
And
you know,
people still complain they're too hard.
they're still a lot harder. They're
Right.
still a little bit hard.
Kind
but
of like complaining that Donkey Kong was ruined by Coleco.
there you go. But we would do things like that to make the game, to do the polish. We used to say we'd spend 90% of the time and effort on the last 10% of the game. And that's why when you picked up an Activision game and you played it, you said, this is one of the best games ever made. That's the effort that we put into it. So when Tom was saying it, he was absolutely saying the truth. I would have said the same thing. So I said, if you want to work for us, you would put the extra effort into making those ramps sloped.
Right.
And a week later, he had it done.
It was horrible, but I had to do it.
Right.
So, and there are a lot of tricks that I did to make that happen, and I could write a book on it. Which I probably will
Someday.
someday, if this guy ever stops asking me to work for him or with him, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I finished Donkey Kong. It shipped on time. In September-October period, it was in every store, which is exactly what they wanted. And when people say, well, they made it bad so the ColecoVision would look good. They had 550 products on the shelves that year in toy stores, Cabbage Patch among them. And that single game, which was nothing more than 4,096 numbers in a list. That's all the game was. 4,096 numbers in the right order. That was my Donkey Kong game. That generated 25% of the total revenue of the company when they had 550 products on the market. So there's no interest in their mind. Let's screw this one up so that we sell more ColecoVisions. Not a chance. It's just not true. So anyway, that answers that. But I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah.
Because it comes up all the time.
Yeah, I think I know where I think I remember where it came from.
Yeah.
It was from a YouTube video by a YouTuber named Larry Bundy Jr. or Guru Larry, and he put it as like a fact, and I was like, I don't see a source for that fact though. Like the closest I could get was like speculation from like a forum thread, and I was like, that's okay.
Well, it's
I
funny.
can say anything on the internet, and it could be
Yeah.
taken just as
That's the
equal
problem.
fact.
Yes, it's not a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary this will come up on threads that he happens to be on, and he will come up and say, I can answer that question.
But they usually wait for everybody to pile on. So there's a whole bunch of people on, they're all arguing with each other.
Yeah.
And then I wait, they just go, I know something about this. And then they all go, holy cow, do you see who just wrote something? weeks of the internet waiting to dive in. It's bad.
So we have NES games, we have SNES games, we have Commodore 64 games, we have
Audacity games.
Audacity games.
More
Um,
questions.
Any other funny stories you want to hear?
So you bring up all the other platforms you guys have developed on. Have you ever thought about, because there's such a resurgence in a lot of different platforms, like mentioned the Commodore 64, the NES, SNES, have you ever thought about actually Audacity doing something on any of those other platforms?
Yes. Yeah, we talk all the time about what to do with the IP we have. Whether we should take some of those games, which have been very well received. I mean, Dan's not here, but Casey's Gold, I mean, is getting reviews like you've never seen. So you say, well, could that go to another platform? You know?
Yeah, the founding principle of Audacity games is to do retro games, not necessarily just Atari 2600, but that's our sweet spot. We love the Atari 2600, and we can do things that nobody else in the world can, so we do.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we have our advantage. We're, you know, humbly better than everybody else on that machine. I have to be humble, but
How
we
humble?
are better than everyone else.
Was that humble? Was it?
Yes, I think it was a little humble. Did it not come off as
If you
humble?
say you're humble, then it's true.
That's exactly right. Yes, they do that in Washington all the time.
That's what it is.
Come on. So, but we would love to do other platforms, like NES especially. We love
SNES.
NES.
SNES was one of my favorites.
Love SNES. Love those platforms. We wouldn't do it without being licensed by Nintendo. So we have a very close relationship with Nintendo. We've done a lot of work with them over the years. I would go to Nintendo and say, this is what we're gonna do. How do we go about doing it where we're not gonna upset you? If they would give us the green light, we'd probably do it.
Would you do an Audacity Apple II game?
No, I don't think it's a big enough market. I mean, I wrote a lot of Apple II stuff. Dan did too. I love the Apple II, but I just don't think it's a big enough market to make it worth our while. People don't know we've done a lot of iPhone games. We could potentially, do something on an iPhone game. I'm not sure if it would be the right market. I don't like the controls on an iPhone for a game like Casey's Gold. Unless you had the, physical controls, but there's just not enough of them out there. So I don't know, these are things we talk about. I'm just not sure where we'll go. But we are looking at how to expand our reach of customers because our current reach of customers is dying off. Excuse me.
Now I feel
And before they're all dead, we better have another platform. Right, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
See, if you walk out here, there's not a lot of Atari.
No, there's not.
I've only seen it at a handful of tables.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a few here and there.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Yep. We are doing our best to keep it alive, goddammit.
The guy next to you has the most.
Yes, yes, and he does that so that when people come over to us and say, and they go, oh, I wish I had brought my games, I would have had you sign one. He's standing there, I have a copy of so-and-so.
$120.
I did that at Midwest Gaming Classic. Had to go find them so you guys could sign them.
Yeah,
The NES.
yeah, yeah. I thought about buying a bunch and putting them on our table and going, well, if you didn't bring one, I can sell you a Keystone case. Low price.
So anybody play a Boy and His Blob? You got a Boy and His Blob here?
Boy,
Played the newer version on the.
The
We
Wii.
have the old stuff too.
The Wii, yeah, the Way Forward game on the Wii.
yes, Boy and His Blob is one of our favorites. It was hell on wheels to make, but absolutely one of our favorites in terms of both
So,
gameplay and stories.
yeah. Absolute Entertainment and the parent company, I guess, Imagineering Inc. at the time, was the first North America developer, right?
Yes, first company in North America to be licensed by Nintendo to develop,
To develop.
not to publish. I think Acclaim was the first one to be licensed to publish on the Nintendo, but they couldn't develop. And I went up and had a meeting with Nintendo, and I said, look, here's who we are, you know, Pitfall, you've heard of that, right? Pitfall. You know, we know what we're doing, we wanna make games for the NES. And they said, well, we'll license you to publish. And we said, no, we don't wanna be licensed to publish. We wanna develop games. Oh, this is Dan. I said, we wanna develop games.
You could hold him up to the microphone.
I could.
For the photo.
And they said, why would you want to develop games? Said there are 1,000 games on the Famicom in Japan. Why would you? There's no reason to develop any more NES games. And I tried to explain to them things about cultural differences and this and that, but they said no. And then 3 months later they said no again. And then 3 months later they said no again. About the 4th trip up, I walked in and they slid papers across and said, fine, you can develop. We're tired of you coming here. They said, but here are the rules. The rules are the development equipment is $35,000 per desk, and all of our documentation is in Japanese.
Oh.
And that's the best we can do to help you, so good luck. So I said, well, if we reverse engineer it and make our own development environment, would you mind if we did that? And they said, no, you wanna do that, it's fine, that's what we did. And then we immediately got into a secondary business of selling the development system that we made, because all the rest of the people in North America couldn't read English and couldn't read Japanese, didn't wanna spend $35,000. So we started selling the development system that we'd made, then we started developing for Nintendo, and then they saw Boy and His Blob and they said, we get it now. That's why you wanted to make games.
Yeah, it's a little known fact that I started out as an electronic engineer, not as a software developer. I worked at National Semiconductor in one of their chip design groups. And it was actually kind of a doubt in my mind as to whether I wanted to actually program on microprocessors when I got offered a job at Atari. But I said, fine, I'll keep this hardware thing on the side. So he needs a development system, he gives me a call.
Yes.
And I made the development system that Activision used for the Atari 2600. I made the development system we're talking about to do NES. And, you know, I always got to dabble in hardware when in between doing games, and it actually kept me kept my fingers in the hardware side. But anyway, so A Boy and His Blob, well, like I said, this company, Gary, we were talking about the predecessor. Well, it's Absolute Entertainment. You guys,
Absolute.
yeah, was the first publisher or developer in North America, but then he wanted to become a publisher. So now you have to go back to Nintendo and beg, I want to be a publisher, and that was another, you know.
But that one wasn't so hard.
Yeah, it wasn't as hard as
They
the other
didn't
one.
want us to publish to start with, so that was like, fine,
Okay.
you're a publisher.
But we got our publishing agreement with Nintendo in maybe April of a particular year. And the way making games for the NES works is you had to develop the game, you had to submit it to Nintendo, Nintendo had to approve it, Nintendo then manufactured it. It took 10 weeks to manufacture, and all this had to be done by September, well, certainly by Thanksgiving. You had to be on the stores in Thanksgiving if you were going to sell a game for Christmas, right? Because people start doing their shopping in November. So we had nothing at all going on the Nintendo, the NES, starting in May of this year, whatever that year was, 86, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the last week of April maybe. And basically for you to do that Nintendo schedule that they laid out, you had to have the final code to them for approval by the last day of May, first day of June.
In fact, that was their deadline.
That was their deadline.
If you did not have had to be approved at that point? I'm not sure.
Had to at least be
Had to be
submitted.
submitted on June 1st.
By June 1st, you're out of luck. Don't talk to us about June 2nd. Don't talk to us. June 1st, that's it.
So it's got to be like April 15th or,
Yeah, April
Whatever.
15th is probably a good guess.
yeah.
Dave calls me up and says, I'm gonna send you a file. And this is AOL 24 baud modem.
Yeah.
4 hours later. I go in my office, I look at the call him up. I said, all right, I'm putting the file up. And I put it up. And I said, holy God, we gotta do this. It's so cool.
I had prototyped this idea that I had. The idea of, I like adventure games. I mean, Pitfall, Pitfall 2, those are adventure games. You go off and you discover. And a lot of PC games, they had adventure games, and they had tool-using adventure games. Like Take Sword, Poke at Person, you know, whatever. And in those kinds of games, the tool was something that you had to go off into another screen, pull up another screen, an inventory screen, and drop this tool, select this tool, and then you come back. And I wanted to figure out a way to do an adventure game that was a tool-using adventure game, but it did not require leaving the environment of the game in order to select a new tool. So that was my goal. And I said, all right, inspired by a cartoon I'd seen in the 60s called the Herculoids that had these shape-changing blobs, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a sidekick, which is your blob, and he's going to follow along wherever you go in your adventure. And I'm going to make him change into a tool that I can then use. So this is the premise of a boy and his blob. Well, how do I tell the boy or tell the blob what tool I want you to change into? Well, I wrote an entire backstory around it of this boy carries around a backpack full of jelly beans, and the jelly beans are multiple flavors. The blob loves jelly beans, and for every flavor, he transforms into a different thing. So if you throw him a licorice jelly bean, he transforms into a ladder. If you throw him a coconut jelly bean, he transforms into a coconut, and you pick up the coconut and you can roll it. So I created all these tools. So what I'd sent to Gary was the prototype of this, which was blob sitting there bouncing, boy standing there, reaches in his backpack, tosses a licorice jelly bean, gets eaten by the blob goes, turns into a ladder, and you walk over and you climb up him, and that's how you get around in the caverns. So that was the prototype. And yeah, it was a pretty cool idea.
It blew me away. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I said, we gotta do this. I said, we gotta get it done by June 1st. This is like the last week of April.
Yeah.
And Dave said, how are we supposed to do that? I said, well, you should fly out and stay here, live here for the next 5 weeks. I'll drop everything I'm doing and we'll write it together. And that's what we decided to do. So Dave got there, next day we called a meeting. We had this one programmer who was the big brain. I mean, this guy was like from another planet. And we bring him in, Rick was his name. And I'm not kidding you how smart this guy was. I couldn't read his code, forget it. And we sat down and we said, Rick, you're gonna be a big part of this project. We're gonna want you to do all these, compression of maps, and in real time, uncompress them and build the screens and blah, blah, blah. And he had just joined the company 2 weeks before or something. And we end the meeting, we tell him we have a firm date of June 1st to submit the code to Nintendo. And we're walking out of the meeting and he goes, Gary, you have a minute? And I said, yeah. And he said, I just started working here. He said, is it normal to do a game of this complexity in 5 weeks? And I said, no. And what was I supposed to say?
A year is normal.
A year. So Dave came out, he stayed in the flop house. We were in Glen Rock. The flop house Glen Rock's a wonderful, quaint, old New Jersey town. And if you walked down to the bottom of our hill through town, past the railroad track, past the giant rock, there's a giant rock, it's the Glen Rock, and go to these old houses on this one street, old Victorians that were a little musty, and rent a room.
They found me a rental.
And
It was
The
not,
flop house.
not the best quality, but it didn't matter. I spent less than 4 hours a day there. We worked 20 hours a day for 5 weeks, and then 3 all-nighters in a row.
to get it to June 1st. And we were so close to not getting it to June 1st that we were like 2 days away from June 1st. We said, we're not gonna do it because we have to FedEx it. We're gonna lose a day. Gotta FedEx, there's no modem. We're not gonna, well, you couldn't modem anyway, Nintendo. You had to give them a ROM, you had to FedEx it. So then I said, I've got an idea. We went to one of our electrical engineers, and we said, why don't you take a development system and a computer
With the ROM burner.
with a round burner, and I want you to fly to Redmond, Washington. And I want you to set up a development lab in a bedroom in this hotel, which is across the street from Nintendo. And we did this. We laid it all out, and he sat in that room until we had code. We had code at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on June 1st. And we AOL'd it to him. He burned the ROM, and he walked across the street and handed it to him at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, yeah.
It was, but you know, this is what great stories are made of, you know? And there were only, what, 7,000 bugs in it?
Yeah.
In that first delivery to Nintendo. Oh my God. So we went to CES the next day, June 2nd to CES Chicago. And Dave and I had to stand there and demo the product. And we would be demoing the product for buyers, press, and we would make a mental note when we saw a bug. Or I'd look at Dave and go, did you just see that? So as the day went on, we got back to our room. We had set up another development environment in our hotel room, called the head of QA. He came in, and all night, he sat there and tested. I sat at one desk, Dave sat at the other desk. So 3 in the morning, imagine this, he's testing, and he goes, oh, problem on Babylonia. Gary, that's your code. And I'd be sleeping. I go, huh? Okay. And then I would go to the computer and fix it. Dave would be sleeping. Oh, problem with the blobs transformation. That's Dave's code. Dave would wake up. He'd go, we did this all night. Went
After
back-
standing in a trade show all day demonstrating this game.
We did it for 3 days. And by the end of the 3rd day, after demoing for 3 days, we had a fairly clean game.
Yeah, and managed to somehow slip that in, you know,
To
2 days
Nintendo.
later, to Nintendo a couple days later.
All right, we're getting waved off.
Yep, it's time.
We're done?
Yep.
All right, one more minute.
Okay.
Just have one, I have to finish this with a great story. So, it's all done. Nintendo had called us and said, I want to tell you that in the halls of Nintendo, everyone loves Avoid His Blob. It is the favorite game in the halls of Nintendo. Everyone is talking about it and playing it, so we felt very good. So after my meetings at CES with Nintendo, when I was able to do a little diversion and slip the ROM into Juana's purse when she wasn't looking to have the new code in it, I was leaving, and she said, oh, do you have a minute? And I stopped, and she said, come here for a minute. And I went in the hall with her,
We're on our last story.
and standing there is Miyamoto, Shigeru Miyamoto.
Oh my god, I'm so glad I'm here for this.
Zelda, Mario, and I never met him. And I shook his hand, and he said, I just want to tell you, A Boy and His Blob is my favorite game. So that was worth it. It was worth all the lack of sleep. All right, guys, that's it. Now, we are over the back wall over there. We have Audacity games, which we didn't get a chance to talk about. They're new 2,600 games. We are selling them if you're interested. Back wall. If you have anything you want autographed, back wall, come visit.
Yeah, just make a hard left as soon as you come out here. Can't miss them. Ton of good stuff over there.
Throw a rock at the back wall, you'll hit it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming, everybody.